This happened about 6 years back, right before the lockdowns, so early January 2020. Probably not the best time to go hitchhiking because of the freezing temperatures, but I was determined to do so. I was entering a part of my life where I would take on a lot of responsibility, and I wanted one last adventure, I guess. I had hitchhiked across the state before, and I told myself this would be the last time. Living in Wyoming can be sometimes like a pressure cooker for bad ideas. After a while, you convince yourself that they're actually good ideas. But since I'm here telling you this, you can gather that what I experienced out on the road was eye-opening. I was out on the back road somewhere between Laramie and Casper, and I was already regretting my decision to backpack across the state. On top of the plummeting temperatures, the high winds were making it extra difficult to travel by foot. I looked like an Eskimo all layered up. I was in a region where there was no cell service for miles. I stuck out my thumb to anyone who was driving past, figuring someone would eventually stop. It took maybe an hour when the sun began setting, when this old beat-up Dodge pickup truck pulled over. My dad used to own one just like it. An older guy was behind the wheel, maybe late 50s, early 60s. He rolled down the window slowly. His face was really messed up. His skin was pulled tight on one side. His right eye was cloudy, like he had been in a fire or something. He didn't say much at first. "Hop in." I climbed in and thanked him. The truck smelled like old coffee and motor oil. I noticed a tattoo on his right forearm. His sleeve was covering most of it, but it looked like it was a barbed wire design wrapping around his wrist. I found it amusing because I have a similar tattoo on the same arm. We rode in silence for a bit, but after a while he struck up a conversation. Asked me where I was heading. In truth, I was heading nowhere in particular, but I told him Cheyenne. Most people wouldn't ride with me because of how I look. I was struck by lightning years ago. That's crazy. How'd that happen? I don't remember. In fact, I have trouble remembering anything from before then. Bits and pieces come back, but it's mostly a blur. Doctor said I was lucky. I don't feel lucky. I glanced over at him, but I don't think he could tell. His bad eye just kept looking forward. "What's that tattoo on your wrist?" "It's barbed wire wrapped around." "Well, I think it looks really cool." "Thanks. I don't remember getting it. Wish I knew if it had any kind of meaning." I planned on revealing mine to him whenever he let me out, and I would share that I used to be in the Marines, and me and some of my friends from my unit got matching tattoos. The sun was almost gone by now. He turned the radio on low, some old country station that was fading in and out as the miles went by. Then he started talking about what he did remember from before. Something he remembered doing was hitchhiking on these roads as well, which is why he chose to pick me up. Even joked that I probably should have paid closer attention to weather reports. That's when I felt a chill crawl up my spine. There was something about this man that made me very afraid. Not like I was in danger, but I don't know exactly how to describe it. It was almost like I felt sorry for myself. One day out of the blue, being struck by lightning and not being able to remember his life from before too well. And I was just kind of feeling, sucks to be me right now. I know how that sounds, but I have to be honest about what I was feeling in that moment. After another long while of silence, I was beginning to get uncomfortable. We passed a sign that indicated the next rest stop was 5 miles up the road. "Can you let me out at that rest stop up ahead?" "Sure thing, champ." Champ. My old man used to call me that. This guy reminded me a lot of my father, actually. Drove the same exact truck, and even spoke in a similar manner. And a part of me was convinced that I had caught a ride with a ghost, seeing as I buried my dad 3 years prior. He and I had a very good relationship when he was alive, and we grew closer when Mom passed away in 2011. He was very proud of my military service. He was also the kind of guy that would never pick up a hitchhiker. even if it was me. And he certainly was never struck by lightning in his life, or had any kind of facial scarring like this man did. My dad's old Dodge pickup was still sitting in my garage. It needed a few repairs before it could be driven again, which I had planned on tackling soon. The driver went silent again, just staring straight ahead. It then dawned on me that I had never introduced myself to him when I got in, or had even gotten his name. When we got to the rest stop, he pulled over slow. "Well, here we are. Best of luck to you." "Thanks for the ride. I never got your name," I said while extending my hand. "My name is Steven." I just sort of stared at him awkwardly for a few moments. "My name is Steven too." "How about that? Small world." "Are you from Wyoming?" "I don't know. My folks passed away before my accident. Like I told you, I don't remember too much from before then. You take care now." We shook hands, and I watched him drive away. Up to that point, I could have dismissed all the similarities between me and the driver as a very bizarre coincidence. But when I saw he had the exact same Wyoming plates that were on my dad's pickup truck, everything clicked together for me. He said he was struck by lightning and could only remember parts of his past. The barbed wire tattoo on his wrist, his first name, Steven. No way. No fucking way. That was the last time I ever went hitchhiking. I had planned on fixing up my dad's old truck, but I decided to sell it instead. And to this day, I'm obsessed with weather reports. If there's even a slight chance of lightning happening, I'm staying indoors. I believe I saw my future that day, but the question of can I avoid it or not remains a mystery. I guess time will tell. It's been a rough few months for me. My mom passed away in late December, losing the battle against cancer. She lived alone in an old house on the edge of a small town in northern Colorado. My dad has been dead for almost 20 years now, and since I'm an only child, with no kids of my own, the cleanup fell to me. I took off a week of work, drove up from Denver, and started going through 30+ years of stuff nobody else wanted. The attic was full of boxes of decorations, old yearbooks, and photo albums that hadn't been opened since the 90s. I eventually came across an old box labeled "Home Movies, Do Not Throw Out" in my mother's handwriting. Inside were about 15 VHS tapes, some with handwritten labels: Christmas 1987, Zach's 5th birthday, Family Picnic 1992, that kind of thing. Going through these old tapes brought back a lot of memories for me, not just of when these tapes were filmed, but when I was a little older and would watch these tapes back. I remember that when I would watch these tapes as a kid, again several years after they were filmed, I would always notice something standing in the background. It wouldn't always be there, but more often than not, whenever there was a shot of me on the playground or at the community swimming pool from our old neighborhood, a dark figure wearing a top hat would be standing somewhere among the trees or by a park bench, motionless. I would compare it to the Slender Man creepypastas. It played out in a very similar manner, but with no mysterious cases of missing children or anything of the sort. I do recall that each time I would watch another tape, the dark figure would get closer to the camera. I eventually stopped watching the family films and dismissed the dark figure as a figment of my imagination, or a nightmare I had. Videotapes themselves were starting to be phased out by the time I finished high school, and my mom would eventually put them all in a box and store them in the attic, where they were forgotten. There was still an old VCR in the living room. My mom was a bit of a dinosaur, right up to the very end. Just to give you an idea, she still had a corded phone next to the couch. I plugged it in, blew dust out of the heads, and popped in the first tape. Zach's 3rd birthday, 1986. Grainy footage started rolling. Then there I was, 3-year-old me in a paper hat, blowing out candles in the backyard, Mom laughing behind the camera. About 3 minutes in, I paused it. It turns out, I wasn't crazy, because there, standing in the background, on the far sidewalk of the main street, was a tall figure, wearing a long dark coat and a top hat, featureless, motionless, as still as a statue, watching us. I stared at the screen for a long time. No one in the video seemed to acknowledge its presence. My dad certainly would have said something if he saw it. I figured that perhaps I'm getting my wires crossed. Yes, there was some weirdo caught on camera watching us as we celebrated my birthday. That's undeniable. But perhaps I exacerbated the memory when I was younger, and my mind mapped him into other memories of watching these tapes back. I hit play again. The figure didn't move through the rest of the tape. He stayed exactly in the same spot until it ended. I put in the next one, Christmas 1987. We were in our old house again, Christmas tree in the corner, next to the living room window. Mom handing me a wrapped gift. Dad was filming this time, making one-liners as he often did. About halfway through, there it was again. Same top hat, same coat, standing directly outside the living room window. Not moving. Still just watching. My dad would have definitely seen it since he was filming, but he didn't acknowledge it at all. I fast-forwarded the tape, and the figure stayed in frame the whole time, inching forward frame by frame. By the end, it was inside the house, standing behind the couch while it was opening presents. Tape after tape, each one, the man in the top hat, was there. Always closer by the end. Family picnic 1992. He was at the edge of the tree line, but by the time we were packing up, he was behind the picnic table, 10 feet from me. I started shaking. For all these years, I thought it was just my imagination, but every tape I would pop in, the figure would be there, in the background, and would draw closer with each frame, just like I remembered when I was a kid. I skipped to the last tape. Zach graduates high school, 2000. We were at the convention center. My parents were in the crowd, and I was in my hat and gown being called on stage to collect my diploma. Mid-walk, the camera cut to a dimly lit hallway. Standing at the far end of this hallway was the figure in the top hat. I froze. I was now face to face with my childhood nightmare. The figure then began sprinting toward the camera. It was very unsettling to watch because I had only ever seen this thing standing perfectly still. But now it was coming directly for me. I almost busted my ass to eject the tape. I did so just before the figure reached the threshold. I just sat there, staring at the blank screen, before I took that box of tapes into the backyard, soaked it with lighter fluid, and set it ablaze. I've delved into online research, and I've come across a mysterious figure known as the Hat Man. He's often described as a ghost-like shadow person, dressed in a trench coat and a hat, which matches the description exactly, and even shares many of the same characteristics. Paranormal researchers believe that this entity just observes those who encounter it. But in all the stories surrounding the Hat Man, there has not been one account of him actually running at the camera, almost like it was trying to break through, leading me to believe that it may have a similar appearance to the Hat Man, but is something else entirely. Whatever that thing was, lived in those tapes. And if I hadn't ejected the cassette when I did, I may have wound up like my parents. Not to suggest that it's responsible for what happened to them, but who knows? So far, it hasn't resurfaced, and hopefully, it stays that way. This one's going to be hard to tell, but I'm hoping that by writing this down and sharing it, it will alleviate some of the pain I've endured for many years now. My name is Chelsea. I'm 26 years old. I grew up in a mansion in Toronto that looked almost perfect from the outside. Big front yard, white picket fence, nice neighborhood. But inside was a different story. My dad left when I was 2. I don't remember him that well. Mom remarried quickly, and my dear old stepdad had deep pockets, hence the mansion. But he wasn't a good person. There were things that happened, things I buried so deep I convinced myself they never occurred. I moved away as soon as I turned 18, changed cities twice, and built a life as a nurse. Quiet, controlled, and safe. But I could never outrun the nightmares. I should say nightmare, singular, because it's always the same. I'm in the mansion I grew up in, walking across the marble floors, up the grand staircase. The chandeliers aren't lit, and the only light is coming from the outside. I'm barefoot, and my heart is pounding as I begin to run. When I enter the hallway upstairs, I look behind me and see this tall figure. I then hear my stepfather's voice. "It's okay, Chelsea. It won't hurt. I promise." The figure would appear as a silhouette at first, but its arms would elongate, scraping the walls to its sides. Its face would be obscured by shadow, but when it stepped into the moonlight, it looked like my stepfather. But sometimes it would be me, other times like nothing human at all. I always woke up screaming, soaked in sweat. This has gone on for years and hasn't been good for any relationships I've tried to build. But no matter what I did, nothing would remedy this. I think I probably would have been able to move past it, or at least learn to live with my trauma, if I wasn't reminded of it almost every night. It got to the point where I couldn't function at work. I finally went to go see a therapist. Again. His name was Dr. Howe. He was in his mid-50s, calm voice, had a warm personality. "I've been in practice for 15 years now. I'm a credentialed psychiatrist, but I found that practicing psychiatry up here can be political and expensive for most patients. To be honest with you, most people I've spoken to over the years don't need medication. They need perspective. Altering the mind with drugs should be the last resort. So please, don't call me doctor. I find that to be too formal. Just call me Jay." This statement put me at ease. I would prefer to take this journey without the use of mind-altering drugs. I've been prescribed medication before, and it's only ever made things worse. I told Jay everything. The mansion, the chase, the way the figure's arms would stretch out, and what it would say to me. "It's okay, Chelsea. It won't hurt. I promise." He listened for a long time, then said quietly, "Reoccurring nightmares like this often represent unresolved trauma, since the setting is in the mansion you grew up in. This could symbolize where safety was supposed to exist, but was in fact dangerous for you. This monster represents the fear you've carried since childhood. Your subconscious is pushing you to confront this. You're not being chased by something external. It's all going on up here. I know this is very frightening, but it is the first sign of healing." It made sense to me. He suggested EMDR, journaling the dreams, even guided visualization. "We will return to the mansion in your mind during our sessions. We'll face the monster together and take away its power." I started feeling hopeful, like the dreams were just my mind finally processing what I had locked away years ago. Jay said we should deal with the nightmares first, and that I wasn't ready to confront my stepfather just yet. The night after my first session, I found myself back in the mansion. Same chase, same scraping sound. I ran down a corridor that I hadn't seen before. The walls were lined with doors, each one cracked open just enough to show the darkness inside. I slowed down, panting, and looked into one of the rooms. There was a bed, and I was lying on it, strapped down with restraints, electrodes on my head, wires running into machines I didn't recognize. Jay was standing over me, clipboard in hand, watching a monitor. He was wearing a white lab coat. He then raised a tape recorder to his mouth. Baseline trauma memory retrieved. Manifestation stable. Proximity increasing per protocol. Final convergence expected within 3 sessions. I stared at the monitor, which showed my brainwaves spiking. My eyes began closing, while Jay's voice whispered, "Deeper, Chelsea. Let it chase you. Allow it to get closer. It won't hurt. I promise." I didn't go to the next scheduled session. I figured that what I saw in my dream was a warning, so I canceled everything on the booking app and blocked his number. But the dreams didn't stop. They continued to get much worse. 2 nights later, I was back in the mansion. The monster was no longer a shadow person. It was much taller now, and its body was larger, but misshapen, with its arms now dragging on the floor. I ran into one of the rooms that lined the hallway. Inside looked exactly like Jay's office. He was sitting there, waiting for me. I stopped. He then looked up and smiled. "You're early. This isn't real. You're not real. I've missed you, Chelsea. I've thought about you for all these years. I've been waiting for so long. Who are you?" Jay's face began peeling off, skin falling to the ground in wet splats, until it resembled my stepfather. I then heard the words that have haunted me for all my life.
"It's okay, Chelsea. It won't hurt. I promise."
I woke up screaming so loud, my neighbors called the police. When they knocked on my door, I just sat there on the floor, staring at the wall. I eventually told them that it was just a nightmare, and they suggested I seek help before they left. I decided that the next day I would set up another appointment with Dr. Howe. I had convinced myself that he was the enemy, but it was just my memories again, mixing new with the old. However, when I tried to book another appointment, I discovered there was never a doctor by the name of Jay Howe in my area. I checked everywhere. Licensing boards, online directories, even the College of Physicians and Surgeons. Not a single trace. The office I went to was located in a building where you had to be buzzed up. When I went there again, I found out that Jay's office was a vacancy. The security guard told me that the place had been empty for at least a year. The therapy session with Jay never happened. I've gotten to the point where I'm not sure what's real anymore. And this story does not have a final resolution. I simply don't sleep anymore. I just sort of close my eyes and wait. And I'm starting to wonder if I should just stop running.